the Fairy Elephant Effect, the podcast that explores those subtle but powerful moments that shaped us, and the new stories we are writing as we reconnect with who we really are. I'm your host, Elysabeth Wolter, life coach under Lizzie's Insights, where I support others in cultivating clarity, creating meaningful growth, and transforming their inner world using intuitive tools like EFT tapping. Emotional freedom technique is one of the most transformational tools that I know for releasing emotional blocks, calming the nervous system, and creating space for real change. It's like emotional acupuncture without the needles. Simple, effective, and life-shifting. And today's guest is someone who works in a field that also invites us to connect with our deeper patterns and potential astrology. Damien McKinnon is a guide who helps people explore their cosmic blueprint with insight and precision. He teaches astrology courses on Udemy and Patreon. No, not quite. Getting it.
Patreon.
Curates the Divine Registry, a trusted directory for astrologers and tarot readers, and shares regular content on YouTube to help people navigate their lives with more self-awareness. Damien, I'm so glad you're here, and let's begin with something human and real. So let's just dive straight into the questions.
Okay.
But you might want to say hello to the viewers first before I throw them at you.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, great to have you here. So, here's the first question. What's a moment from your childhood that stands out, especially one where something was said or happened that made you go into your head? Maybe it was planted belief that you were too much, not enough, or just didn't fit in.
I grew up in a household of violence, physical, emotional, and mental violence. And I remember being about 7 years old. I just had the flogging of my life. And I remember sitting in a room by myself in the dark and thinking, I was ready to end myself. I remember I was 7 years old and I was sitting there, and then this thought with absolute clarity came into my head. He said that said, that's not how a child should think. It wasn't even like my voice, you know what I mean? And I remember just sitting there and hearing that voice of absolute clarity, and that just stilled me. And it was funny, right up to that moment, like most kids, I was scared of the dark, but after I heard that voice, I could only sleep in total darkness after that. So it's like a transition happened, like a switch got flipped or something like that. And that for me was my transformational moment, I think. I felt like I was floating or drifting through most of my life from that point. You know what I mean? And it wasn't the best environment to grow up in. I didn't have a lot of those connections I think we're supposed to have with our parents. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, of course you do. And without that, you're left to your own devices, and you don't have a lot to draw on when you're that age. But when I heard that voice and I felt that feeling, and I turned the lights off, I used to sleep with the whole light on. I remember one night, I think it was the night after that, the light bothered me. I went out and turned that light off, and I never turned it on again. So, and then everything just felt bigger after that. And they felt like there were more possibilities, more options available. At the very least, it was bigger than the house I was living in.
Well, that's pretty amazing, really. When something quite small really left such a big mark, that moment was a huge mark. And I like to call them the Fairy Elephant Effect because, I like to swing it back around. But something in that moment created a whole different ripple for you in your life.
Yeah, and I think that's, for me, when I looked at your book when I was reading it, that's what the Fairy Elephant Effect is for me. It's starting points, I think. They're like, they say choice is the death of all possibilities. It feels sort of like that. You make a choice, or a choice is made for you. And astrology recognises both of those. And you're changed afterwards. All the other options that were available before, whether you even were aware of them or not, they're gone. And you're following one path now. Or things have changed in such a way that you see things in a certain way. And And, and it's interesting, again, too, getting back to the furry elephant effect, when you look at core beliefs and things like that, when you're that age, most of those things that are dumped on you, you don't have the experience, the intelligence, the knowledge, to the wisdom, to tell whether they belong to you or not. So they all just get pushed under the threshold of your consciousness,
Yeah, and they become your identity, and you don't know how to navigate away from them.
That's right. And I remember, because I was working in the human services industry for a while, and I remember going to some conference we were talking about, we worked in the Logan ESA up here in Queensland, which is the most beleaguered, the toughest ESA. ESA is like a reach for, social welfare equivalent over here, you know what I mean? And we worked in the toughest ESA in the country. And I remember this lecturer saying that the brains of children that grow up in households of violence and things like this develop differently. You know what I mean? Certain parts of the brain don't activate, certain other parts of the brain that wouldn't activate in people in, I guess, better demographics will activate for them, At the very least, I think your fight or flight instincts get cranked right up.
And you freeze.
Yeah,
We're moment in time frozen in an emotional incident because you couldn't get out and you couldn't fight back.
Yes, exactly. You start from that point, and that becomes one of those start points, and your reality spans out from there. So, I really, in that capacity, I really admire the work you're doing, helping people to double back and find these points and untangle them, and move on. And in my own way, I've been doing that with astrology too. That's my passion.
The question is, you work with astrology in such an insightful way, helping people see themselves from a much broader and deeper lens. And that's really what your work is like. You give people that opportunity. And if someone was wanting to be curious about it, what's a piece of guidance where would you say for them to start deep diving in that direction?
I've been hosting courses, paid courses on the Udemy platform since 2019. I've got more than 13,000 students in 139 countries.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, the reason I say that is the most common, what I've got enough of a sample group to see that the commonalities that come up, and the most common one that I see for people wanting to learn astrology, well, the most common two, the first is just curiosity, which I think is the perfect reason to learn anything.
Yes.
And the second is people had an astrology reading done at some point in their lives, either when they were young, it might have been done by a friend, it might have been done at a fair or something like that, you know what I mean? And then they see the results of that manifest. Some people, it's straight away, they get curious straight away and they start learning. Other people, literally takes decades. You'd be surprised how many people I've got who've signed up for courses who waited till they retired. But they had a reading back when they were in their 20s or something like that. One's from fundamental Christian backgrounds and things like that just finally felt they'd reached an age and a level of mental independence that they can learn something like that. I think the two,
maybe they gave themselves permission to actually do something.
Exactly, and feel safe, and feel safe to do that and things like that. And I think it's one of the best things about astrology is you can look at the same chart from when you were 15 right through to you're 55, 75, 100 years old. When you check back on it and you look at it in different stages of your life, it'll read completely differently. It will reflect your experience, your level of self-knowledge, your prejudice, your fear, your tricks and devices that you use to bullshit yourself into believing whatever, you know what I mean? I always look at astrology as a mirror. You will always see what you want to see if you're looking hard enough for it. And the fact that you look so hard for those things sometimes is the biggest tell about who you are at that time. So it's a really, really good tool for getting to know yourself. If for no other reason than to get a gauge of your own emotional honesty about yourself too. You'll find what you want to find, you'll see what you want to see. The more you get into astrology, the older you get, the more you start to see your patterns and your ways of doing things. So you'll start to see just how dynamic life is, how dynamic you are internally. You know, many people just believe we're one kind of person, but when you look at the astrology chart, when you do readings for people, you see people grow and they develop, and the aspects on the chart, they're like rails, you know, that our lives follow. And we invest energy at certain stations along those junctions, you know what I mean? And they grow while other ones wane, and there's a lot of wisdom in that, and there's a lot of positivity in that too. So getting back to your question, I think if you want to learn something about yourself, if you want to learn everything about yourself at any given time, I think it's an excellent tool for that. You know, you'll see things about yourself that you weren't aware of. You'll see the way the world influences you, the way you influence what's happening around you. Yeah, so.
Well, that's now. Just do you still have that the three? You know, your sun sign, your moon sign. Do you still have that little three thing on Udemy? I've seen a lot of people
course, the big three. I think almost everybody's aware of their sun sign. Yeah, their star sign, as they call it. In astrology, we call it a sun sign that represents the position of the sun at the time you were born. But you've also got a moon sign and you've got an ascendant sign as well, and they call them the big three. So you'll find some people, you know, if your sun sign never felt like a good read for you, then you might be connecting more with your moon sign. You might be more emotionally focused. You might be more connected to your ascendant. You know, you're more appearances focused, or your image dictates who you are at a given time. So that's a free little course.
That's a great way for people to get introduced to what you do as well, give them some new knowledge, and so that is a great course, and I'll put the details.
What it can also do is it can show you that you can be taught as well. And for a lot of people who have not been studying, who didn't do well at school, who didn't get the opportunity to really invest their time and energy into something, I've really struggled to learn. It's an easy win. And a way to find out about yourself, and I think that's why I put it up. That's why it's a free course. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's a great introduction to your work, and it does. It opens the door. Oh well, but I've learned this about myself. Maybe I can go and learn some more stuff, and I think it's a great pathway. And I've done it, and I've seen a lot of people that way, because I think if people are curious, that's a good place to start. You know, when they find out that they go, oh, I found this about me. What else can I find out about me? And I think that's important. Curiosity is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves as we get older.
Yeah, and self-knowledge. If you're one of those people who you know, every time you're flicking through Facebook, you see a poll, what type of anime character are you, or what kind of Star Wars character are you, something like that, and you can't resist doing that, then, you know, astrology is going to keep you going for some people for a lifetime. So
exactly.
Yeah.
But, I think anything that we do that helps us bring us back to having a more understanding of our own inner workings, our own connection, you know, coming home to ourselves, because that creates a different ripple in the pond. I think it is, you know, we kind of have an obligation in a way to ourselves to investigate the things that we're interested in, because we can't learn if we just keep looking at the same things. And I think, you know, that's interesting. You're saying astrology, as we evolve, our astrology evolves. And so people can come back to a place, get another platform, and then go forward with it. And I think that's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I really got passionate about astrology. I was learning for a while, and I just sort of put it on pause. And like I said, I started working in the human services industry, and what fascinated me is a lot of what I learned in astrology, not the chart reading stuff, all that, but how you think and how you envisage people and how you envisage the challenges that they're facing and the tools that they've got available to them. You know, when you think about it in the context of the way the chart works, it helps your work a lot, and it helps helps people. You know, helps you to help people find their own strengths and tease out their own weaknesses and things like that. And it's great for counselling, great for developing counselling skills and working with tough clients. You know, we were working with ex-offenders with mental illness. We had schizophrenic clients, bipolar, you know, the whole list, DV and all that sort of stuff. And when you approach it from that point of view, you have more perspective. You're standing back from the problem rather than being in the centre of it. And you're encouraging and helping a person to see their challenges the same way, you know, and that works really, really well. And that's when I got interested back into it. Yeah. Yeah.
And so for you, it's now what you do all the time?
I'm more a teacher now. I was doing a lot of readings. I did a lot of readings when I first learned, and you know, I really, really enjoyed it. And thing was, I always seem to attract clients that were going through the worst parts of their lives. So, no, I think you send out a radar. You must have seen it yourself, when you start learning a certain thing. And for me, that started at a pretty young age. I got into the occult really young, and I started attracting people who had occult problems. I remember a guy getting on the bus with me once and just out of the blue sat down next to me and said that him and his girlfriend had been playing with a Ouija board and attracted something that they didn't know how to get rid of. And I'm just sitting here thinking, well, shit. You don't know me. Why did you come to me? I was dressed in a suit. I was on my way to work. So,
your vibration was saying, this is the right ripple
right,
for me. This is the right ripple.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you put that wavelength out there. But I was doing a lot of readings back in the beginning. I'm really, really about teaching people now.
I think you're a brilliant educator. And I think that you have a fantastic way of expressing quite complex ideas and force, but you have a great way of expressing it. And I think the people who've done your courses are totally kind of in awe of you, Damien.
Thanks. Sweet of you.
So I've got one last question. So do you, have any other fairy elephant effect you would like to share? Or a time when you realised the belief you've been carrying wasn't yours? Like we talked about that earlier on, we pick up these things, we don't know how to navigate. And that you realise you no longer needed it to define you. Because it's a big question, but it's, I think, an important one.
It's a really interesting one. It's a really good question, actually. And it's a really... I had to sit with that one for a while. And, the one that struck me was... I went to boarding school. I went to Dilworth, which is a bit notorious at the moment in the news.
Yes.
Yeah, and I had my home life was not good. So I was really, really acting out at school. I was a real rebel. I was destructive, and I got expelled for being a subversive. And once I remember reading the letter, inciting other people into trouble. Aquarian brain working for the forces of evil, sort of thing. And what happened was I got expelled, and they waited till the school year ended. I got a letter in the post, and I didn't get to start the next year. They said no house-masters were willing to have me in their boarding houses. No teachers were willing to teach me. And if things were bad at home, they were worse after that. The first thing I noticed was the friends that I had at school, nobody reached out to me, nobody at all. And I remember this incredible sense of feeling betrayed and being left, just being dumped, basically, dropped, and everybody's lives just moved on. And you know what? I had trust issues, really, really deep ingrained trust issues. And it's interesting, I got in my first sort of serious relationship pretty quickly after that. And a lot of that negative stuff that was in me, I was sort of projecting onto the girlfriend I had at the time. And then that broke up really horribly as well, and that just reinforced all of those trust issues, and I never opened up again to anybody. And for decades I've been going through life just not trusting anybody at all, not building connections, moving through life as quickly as possible, trying not to touch the ground when I do. And then this whole scandal...
I remember that, Damien.
Yeah.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, I lived like that for decades, and then this whole scandal broke out in school, and I remember a Facebook invitation turning up in my messenger to join this group for survivors of the Dilworth, thing that was going on, and I joined, and I could not believe how warm the reception was when I joined, and people didn't ditch me; they just didn't know what happened. The school didn't tell them.
They didn't know how to deal with it, probably. They didn't know how to reach out.
Well, that's right. They didn't, so they had just assumed that I'd left school and moved on with my life. People were, one guy I remember we used to jam, we used to play guitar all together, and I taught him how to play the guitar, and he's actually won some awards for music in New Zealand and things like that. And he said he'd been waiting to connect with me because he said if I hadn't taught him how to play the guitar, we used to go out and busk in the Christmas holidays and things like that. He said if I hadn't taken the time to do that, he never would have got those awards. He never would have chosen that as a path. And before I was saying that choice is the death of all other options, I think when I had that experience, suddenly it was literally like a weight coming off my shoulders. And so
And
it felt like all
that
these other
story didn't
possibilities
define you
opened
anymore.
up. Yeah, exactly. You know, and I'd been carrying this toxic, flawed belief for decades.
Yeah.
So it was a really powerful moment, and it's I like what you said earlier because it's something that I believed in. That's something that I'd say to everybody. It's never too late.
No.
For some of us, the
Never.
best work of our lives will happen much later. The best astrologers are old astrologers because I believe 50% of astrology is knowledge, and the other 50 is experience, life experience. You know, if you can't, life experience helps you take that knowledge and turn it into something meaningful for other people.
I totally agree. And I'm holding
yeah.
Louise Hay, who I do love her work. She didn't even start Hay House until she was in her 60s.
Yeah.
So as we get older, instead of being less value, we actually can bring all of this knowledge and wisdom and the tools to share it with people that is going to really impact their lives.
Yeah.
So I think we're in the right place, going the right directions, Damien.
We both are. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
At the right time.
And it's joy.
Yes. So that'd be my fairy elephant effect story. It felt ridiculous more than anything. Yeah.
Because that would have changed all perspective for you, and it would have given you a different place inside you that you could connect to now that wasn't hollow, perhaps, because that would have been a hollowness, I imagine.
And it's hard to describe this in a way that makes sense, but like I said before, it felt like I was running through life as quickly as possible, not trying to touch the ground while I was doing it. And then when I got this response from everybody and I let that belief go, I actually felt still for the first time in a long time. And I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know how to process that when it happened. It just suddenly, it's like breathing out. It was bizarre. So,
That's absolutely brilliant. Really, it's just brilliant. I think that's a beautiful way to describe it as well, because, many of us want to be somewhere else other than where we are. And when we can get still and we can be who we are and go, oh my gosh, this is okay. This is more than okay. I'm finally feeling like I have really meant to be here. Not I'm working towards it, or perhaps I know now. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. So I want to thank you, Damien, for sharing your story, your gifts, and your grounded wisdom with us today, which has absolutely been such a truth. And for those listening, you can explore Damien's work through his online courses. Now, I'm going to put some stuff at the bottom of this podcast and subscribe to his YouTube channel. There'll be more information at the bottom. And if episode has resonated with you, pause and take it in. These moments matter. They're part of the map back to who you really are. This is the Fairy Elephant Effect. I'm Elysabeth Wolter, life coach at Lizzie's Insights, where I help you return to your truth so you can lead from the heart.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
Thank you, Damien. I have enjoyed this so much, and we will catch up at another time. Thank you.
That's good.